governments around the world have put major travel restrictions in place over the spread of COVID-19.
Coronavirus outbreak, over 5,000 tourist groups have cancelled their trips to Malaysia since January.
Tourism, the act and process of spending time away from home, is pursuit of recreation, relaxation and pleasure. While making use of the commercial provision of service, by the early 21st century, international tourism had become one of the world's most important economic activities. In Malaysia, GDP tourism is one of the third biggest contributor after manufacturing and commodities. In 2018, this sector contributed around 5.9% to the total GDP. In recent years, the tourism industry had experienced a significant growth, and Malaysia was keen to capitalize on this trend. The Visit Truly Asia Malaysia 2020 campaign was launched in this hope of reaching the ambitious target of 30 million visitors and 1,000 billion Malaysian ringgit in tourism receipts for 2020. However, the outbreak of Covid-19 has led to the cancellation of this campaign.
Warahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I'm Jawahir and I'm gonna analyze this news from the perspective of the economic concept of demand.
First of all, we have to know what does demand concept means. Demand literally based on consumers' desire to purchase a good and services and willingness to pay a price for a specific good and service. There are so many factors, types, methods, techniques, and impacts of demand, which make marketers and economists to be aware of it. As we have looked for the news on the internet, and I found that the demand concept is really evident on it. News is about how does the COVID-19 pandemic impact on Malaysian tourism. In the news, the outbreak of COVID-19 has exposed a major risk to visit Malaysia 2020, comparing as 50% of Malaysian tourists and originated from Singapore and China. The increasing cases of COVID-19 in both countries has led to the cancellation of many towers, which has already led to a large drop in the number of tourists.
The most sector that has been severely affected in the tourism field due to the emerging coronavirus 2020 was
travel, and tourism is among the most affected sectors, with a massive fall of international demand amid global travel restrictions, including many borders fully closed to contain the virus. According to the latest issue of the UNWTO, that international tourist overnight visitors fell by 72%, while demand for international travel remains subdued. Domestic tourism continues to grow in several large markets such as China and Russia, while domestic air travel demand has mostly returned to pre-COVID levels. In order to fully contain the virus, the Prime Minister of Malaysia announced the 4 phases of Movement Control Order (MCO) as they expected the numbers of COVID-19 cases would continue to increase. The prohibitions during the MCO will further contract Malaysia's tourism industry and therefore effective policies to assist the industry players and imperative.
Hi, I'm Aisha. So, I will continue my part. I will relate this news to supply topic. First of all, the news stated that the outbreak of COVID-19 encouraged Malaysia ban travel activity that involve the visitors from China. Generally, as we know, China is one of the countries that contribute the higher number of visitors in Malaysia. From this, we can conclude that there will be no visitors that come from China to Malaysia. So, the airlines company that based in Malaysia need to cut off all the flight schedule to control their costs. Furthermore, the news also mentioned that global travel and tourism has plunged, which lead all countries all over the world to implement travel restrictions to control the virus spread. In addition, there are some citizens that need to cancel their flight ticket due to this pandemic. As a result, the quantity supply of flight decreased. This changing factor caused the supply curve of flight that travel all over the world will shift to the left. Similarly, if the world recover from this outbreak, the supply of flight will increase gradually, which lead the supply curve shift to the right.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hurrihan Nabila binti Zaid. I will be deeply sharing on how is this affect Malaysia tourism. Since the travel industry, or we easily call it as a tourism industry, it is one of the main existing businesses and is viewed as an urgent wellspring of economic growth in the world of economy. It is truly believed that this might be affected when they are going to be banned. As a quick example, during this pandemic of Covid-19 earlier of this year 2020, considering that everyone has knowledge about this, on 4th September, there are 23 countries that have been banned from entering Malaysia. So now, I will discuss on how this is affected to Malaysian economy. The GDP of Malaysia will be decreasing. Why? The first one is because there is no one that is allowed to enter or travel outside Malaysia. Since the introduction of the Movement Control Order MCO on 18 March, airline companies nationwide have been to halt their operations and ground large parts of their fleets. According to Transport Minister Sri Vikas Siong, Malaysia's aviation industry is projected to lose 13 billion this year as air travel continues to face travel restrictions. Malaysia Airlines, which from the beginning of the MCO has scaled down its operation, introduced salary cuts and offered unpaid leave to over 13,000 of its employees. It is now undergoing an urgent restructuring exercise to ensure its survival. The second one is, it is obviously reported that the travel and tour package are dropping, which influence mostly tourism and airlines. With the borders closed, there is not a single international visitor or any foreigner that is allowed to come into Malaysia, either for a vacation or travel. Hence, all the domestic travellers during the early pandemic are just holidaying with their family members. Until 23rd of November, there are a total of 204 tourism and hotel operators have closed their business since March of this year due to the impact of the Covid-19 pandemic and enforcement of the Movement Control Order MCO. 32 out of 109 entities from the hotel sector and 38 out of 95 tourism agencies were ordered to close by the courts or they are closed voluntarily. However, Malaysia still hopes for rapid recovery of tourism. The airlines, hotels, transport company and other operators are to cooperate and offer joint travel package. This will reduce the cost for businesses and visitors and make the country's tourist industry more competitive. The tourism sector in Malaysia is expected to slowly recover at the end of the year and stabilize by June 2021.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Tihadillah and I will talk about the concept of price elasticity. Price elasticity is basically a measure of the relationship between a change in the quantity demanded of a particular good and a change in its price. When the change of price for a particular goods result in change for the quantity demanded for those goods, it is called elastic, while if the quantity demanded do not change very much given a change in price, it is inelastic. Conclusively, price elasticity of demand is used to measure consumer sensitivity to price or how responsive consumer demand is for a product or service given a change in price for that product or service. With the current pandemic of Covid-19, travel and tourism in Malaysia has been affected. Generally, the average price elasticity of demand for the international tourism and hospitality industry range from 0.6 to 2, which means it can be elastic and inelastic, depends on the traveler purpose. When a person traveling for the purpose of business,
they are less sensitive to a change in price. This is because business travelers may not have an alternative destination to choose from, since it is more important for them to get a hotel near their business event even though they need to pay with higher price. On the other perspectives, a leisure traveler who is going on vacation is more sensitive to price because they are free to choose where they go and price is definitely play a big part in their decisions. Therefore, the price drop for a product or service will result in higher quantity demanded for those product or service in the case of this type of traveler.